Thank you, thank you. Good morning, Creative Mornings. Good morning, Creative Mornings. That sounds better. How are you doing this morning? It's good to see so many smiling faces. I was going through scrolling to see who the attendees were, and I'm recognizing some of the faces. So I'm feeling a little bit of warmth. I'm feeling a little bit of comfort. I feel like I know you people, even though I don't know you people. It definitely took some courage to stand up here this morning. Someone asked me, are you nervous? Heck yeah, I'm nervous. Every time I get in front of a new audience, there's some nerves that happen, and I think that's healthy. I think it's very healthy, and I think that is a good sign that you're taking it seriously. So if you notice a little bit of sweat dripping and falling, don't mind it. Just know that I am glad to be here, and I am taking this very seriously. Now, on a lighter note, I am glad to have my sisters here with me. My oldest sister and my youngest sister slipped in this morning. Just a shout out to my sister Karissa and Karissa. My youngest sister Karissa is definitely a courageous one. She is carrying a child in her belly as we speak. And tomorrow I will venture off into a daring feat, hosting a baby shower, my first one, so keep me in your prayers. Keep me in your prayers. This has been a very, very peculiar journey that I've been on. I can't believe it's been about 11 years, we'll start there, since I had a mild stroke. You might have read it in my bio. I was 21 years old at Oral Roberts University in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And I was a senior in college, carrying 22.5 credit hours. Do not be courageous in doing that. It is not worth it. I was carrying 22.5 credit hours, and I was trying to graduate on time. Well, did that happen? Not quite. 4 years later, I finally graduated on time. But when I was 21 years old, and I was carrying those credit hours, my body started to tell on me and said, something is not right, honey. You are overwhelmed, overworked, and you are not cutting it. And so I was working on an assignment, and all of a sudden I started feeling this tingling on the right side, and it started to travel down all throughout the right side of my body. And I'm like, and I decided to leave where I was studying and go across campus. And at that point, I knew that something wasn't quite right, but I wasn't quite able to put my finger on it. And so someone said, are you all right? Are you okay, Karissa? Are you okay? And I just kept on walking. I go to the mirror when I finally make it to my dorm room, and I look. At that point, my mouth is like this. And so at that point, I was pretty sure that I was having some type of mild stroke or a stroke. So I decided, okay, courage in experiencing courage or exercising courage, sometimes you have to ask for help. And so I went down to one of the RAs on the floor. I was a head resident advisor at the time. And I knocked on her door, and she saw me and immediately knew to call for help. So the ambulance got there, and they came up with the stretcher, and I'm laying on the stretcher, and I said, put the sheet over my head. Put the sheet over my head. I was humiliated. And when you're exercising courage, yes, you're vulnerable, but sometimes you might be humiliated. And I was saying, put the sheet over my head, because I wasn't trying to face reality, which is people seeing me broken, people seeing me damaged, people seeing me weak. And the thing that I've learned about courage is it takes a lot of honesty. Sometimes it's, I'm not enough, but I'm going to try. And so in the journey of walking toward my healing and walking toward wellness is I asked for help. I asked for counseling, which caused me to be completely open dealing with an unhealthy relationship that I was in, dealing with the 2 jobs that I was working, just letting it all out. Why did I pile all that on at one time? Because I was trying to be great. I was trying to conquer the world. But I found out that it's all right not to exceed sometimes. It's all right to lean on someone for help when you're weak. And so what happened with that whole healing process is that the 4 years that it took, it was a time of quietness. Sometimes courage is loud like a lion, and then sometimes courage is listening and saying, I need to study a little bit more. I need to listen a little bit more so that I can press even further. And so when I was able to finally wrap up my degree, I said, well, how am I going to reward myself? How am I going to treat myself for finally finishing this degree, for finally conquering this goal? And I said, well, let me take a trip. So I decided I'm going to go with a group of people, about 10 or 11 folks, signed up for this trip. So I'm like, all right, let's go to Europe. That sounds like a good place to start. And little by little, each person dropped out. Oh, I'm not going to be able to make it. I'm not going to be able to make it. Well, something came up. Well, this is happening. So I'm like, okay, so I'm here thinking I'm getting ready to go take this trip. You exercise a little courage with 10, 11 people, and everybody drops out. So I said, well, everybody has dropped out. What are you going to do, Karissa Johnson? You going to just say, all right, I'm going to stay home too? I decided I don't know anybody in England that I feel comfortable connecting with. So what should I do about that? I reached out to some people who actually knew some people there, and I'm like, can you hook me up with somebody to stay with and somebody to, travel with while I'm there? And thankfully, I was able to do that. So to make a long story short, I took that first trip to England and was just bombarded with love, bombarded with it. And so that trip took me back home, and I took some time of meditation and thought and said, well, if the world is so inviting, if the world is so kind and so warm, even if I don't know them, then what else can I do? And so what I decided was to use that degree that I took. International Community Development was my degree. My concentrations were special ed and teaching English as a second language. I'm like, am I going to continue working in HR at OPPD for 4 more years? Or am I actually going to use this degree? And so I looked online. I'm like, okay, teaching English as a second language, there's lots of opportunities. Where should I go? I'm looking throughout Asia. And I see an opportunity in Hangzhou, China. And so I select that, and I go through different interviews, and I got hired. And so when I went to China, and I got to the airport, and I got the job, I got to the airport, and I'm looking around. They said that there's going to be a girl here waiting for me, and I don't see her. So what do you do when you are the only when you're the only, you look around for what? Help. Courage is not only lending a helping hand, but asking for help. So I decided to step into the direction where I figured someone would be able to help me, a police officer. All right, you look like you would be a helpful person, other than the fact that I don't know Chinese right now. But simply stepping in that direction led me to see the bag that the lady was carrying, which said EF, the school that I would be going on. So sometimes just taking that step in the direction to ask for help will lead you to your answer. Now, when I went to this young lady, and I had my 2 suitcases, and she started to laugh at me. She started laughing at me. I'm like, why are you laughing? She's like, you have 2 suitcases, and you live on 6th floor, and there is no lift. No lift, no elevator. We got to my apartment. We took a bus, about an hour bus. Then we took about a 20-minute cab ride. And then we took about a 3-block walk. And I'm like, I did not sign up for this. I thought that there was going to be some type of Southern hospitality. This is Southeastern Asia. It did not happen. We got to the apartment, and she's like, you have to carry it up 6 flights. I said, actually, you're going to help me with this suitcase. So sometimes courage is demanding. If you don't ask for what you need, you may not get it. So courage sometimes is rescuing yourself from your comfort zone. Courage is rescuing yourself from your comfort zone. Maybe you're not so comfortable asking for what you need, but courage requires you to ask for it, to get in the face and say, no, this is what I need, and this is how I need it to be done. Good for you. We can't be cowards if we're to be courageous. And that's something that I've learned is asking for help. That's a big piece of the courageous journey. Another element when I was in my travels was the Southeast Asia aspect of my story. I had gone to Hangzhou, China, and I taught at this school, and there was a young lady named Anna from England. And she told me that she had trekked and hiked throughout China and Tibet and all throughout Southeast Asia, and she did it for about a year. And I'm like, oh, you go, Anna. That's not for me. I'm like, by yourself? You went by yourself? She's like, yeah, there's a lot of people that do it all the time. Backpacking, it's not that big of a deal. And I'm like, okay, well, all right, let's just sit down and go over the options, okay? Let's just go over some options. So I sat down with her, and she mapped out this magnificent, meticulous journey for me. You will go to this city, and then you'll go here, and then you'll go here, and then you can ask where to go here, and this, that, and the other. And I'm like, all right, this is a little overwhelming, but we'll go for it. So to make a long story short, I lost that piece of paper. And I'm like, okay, so now what? What am I supposed to do now? Okay, so yeah, Shanghai to Bangkok, get off the flight in Bangkok. And my roommate actually had said, you just get on Khao San Road, and there's going to be plenty of hostels, plenty of hotels. Just get off on Khao San Road, and you'll be fine. Now, one piece of advice for you, don't fly into Bangkok at 2, 3 in the morning. That was my error. But anyway, I got to Bangkok. And I looked at Khao San Road, and Khao San Road looked at me. And I was frightened on Khao San Road. But step by step, rejection by rejection, no, we're full, no, we're full, no, we're full, I finally found a place to rest my head. And when I woke up the next morning, I took the first train to Chiang Mai, because Bangkok is not for everybody. So I took the first trip to Chiang Mai, first train to Chiang Mai, and later enjoyed experiencing that city and decided to ask some questions. Courage is curious. Courage is definitely curious. So asking questions of other travelers and other trekkers about their experiences and recommendations on where to go, what to see, and things like that. It further led me to travel from Thailand to Laos. And in Laos, while I was in Laos, I was able to go to a place called Luang Prabang. And while I was there, I knew that I had a desire to go to Australia eventually. I hadn't bought a ticket. I hadn't mapped out my route, but I knew that I wanted to go there. And so I was in Luang Prabang, and I said to myself, all right, Karissa, you didn't plan this so well. You didn't execute seamlessly. So you're gonna have to figure out a way to ask someone for their credit card so you can book the flight to Australia. How do you think that went? So courage, you have to have some guts. You're in a foreign land, you're a foreign face, and you're gonna ask somebody for something that they value oh so dear, their money. Now, let me explain. I didn't really ask to use their money. I had my own money. I just wanted to use their card. Simple, right? So I went through a couple of people. I was traveling with a young lady. I met a young lady and was we got our toes done in Luang Prabang. We're getting our toes done. I'm like, so do you mind, if I just borrow your credit card to book my flight? I didn't get my money transferred to my U.S. account in time, so I was just curious if I could borrow your credit card. And she's like, sure, no problem. So we go to enter the information. It didn't go through. The address, it just kept on messing up. So I'm like, well, thanks anyway. I go to a cafe, and I'm reading and enjoying myself at a cafe, and I decided to ask one of the ladies, I'm like, do you mind if could I, by chance, use your credit card? And she's like, I know we had a good conversation and all, but it's not, no, we're gonna have to pass on that. So the owner of the hotel that was connected to the cafe, we had struck up a conversation. I just asked him, I said, could I use your credit card to book my flight to Australia? And he's like, sure. Now, not only did he exercise courage by letting me use his credit card, but when he walked out the room while I had his credit card, that was extreme courage. Courage sometimes is a little foolish. Now, it was so interesting to see how that aspect of the story turned around, because I ended up using his credit card, and he ended up allowing me to use that, and I paid for my flight, and I was able to even ask him another question regarding the currency. There was an issue with the currency, and the money that I had given him, I actually gave him too much money. So I said, the currency exchange with the flight, you actually owe me about $20. So So yeah, that was a courageous effort of mine too. Somebody already did you a favor, then you're asking, you actually owe me $20. But anyway, so in that, I was able to take that trip from Laos. To Singapore, where I was able to meet up with someone who I knew from back in the States. And from Singapore, I was able to take that flight to Australia. And while I was in Australia, I decided to do another, what you would consider courageous act, something called Couchsurfing. Anybody heard of Couchsurfing? Raise your hand if you heard of Couchsurfing. All right. Now, Couchsurfing is exactly what it sounds like. You get on that couch and you have your surfboard and just ride the wave. What Couchsurfing is, for those who are not familiar, is that you're staying at someone's home for free. In another land, in your land, in a land. And so what I did is I went online and I booked a place for Couchsurfing. And so someone I didn't know met me at the hostel where I was staying. And she said to me, now, my parents don't know that you are a couch surfer. They think that you are actually one of my friends from college. So I'm like, okay, Lord, we're starting on a lie. This is not good news. So I'm like, okay. And then she's like, and let me tell you about the place where I live. And I'm like, what kind of thing did I just sign up for? And so she's telling me that she actually lives on the Darling Harbor. So it was this gorgeous, stunning place where I got to stay full free because I closed my eyes and clicked a button and said, I'm gonna do it. So we get there, and it was exactly what she had said. It was beautiful in the Darling Harbor, and I'm just crying like a baby because I'm like, this place is free, I don't deserve it. I didn't plan well, I didn't execute as well, but it was beautiful. And I was so grateful. And from there, from Australia, came back home, from Australia, came back home, and then I decided, all right, 6 weeks, 5 countries, I just did that. Went through Malaysia, Singapore, Australia, Thailand, Laos. Surely this 7 by 30, the goal of seeing all 7 continents by the age of 30, it actually might come true. So I was able to go back home and get some more counsel and guidance, and I decided to apply for a position in Saudi Arabia at Princess Noor University, the largest women's university in the world. And that was one of the best decisions I've ever made. In taking that leap and launching forth and rescuing myself from my comfort zone is definitely being home in Nebraska and speaking English. My comfort zone is being around people that I know and know well. But rescuing myself from my comfort zone placed me in a remarkable place where I was able to learn from the women that I taught, and I was able to learn the culture, and I was able to walk in a land that was foreign to me, but became very familiar. And if I had not exercised that boldness and took those steps of bravery and been vulnerable, I wouldn't have experienced that. In the time that I spent in Saudi Arabia, and I was able to teach at Princess Noor University and also King Saud University, I was able to listen. I was able to listen to the stories of the young ladies and them telling me about Snapchat. I didn't even know about Snapchat. The students in Saudi Arabia were the ones that actually introduced me to Snapchat, and they were able to tell me, come to my wedding, or come experience this barbecue with me, and go out into the desert. And I was able to experience so much just because I said yes. And in experiencing courage or exercising courage, the way that muscle grows is with action. Nothing combats or confronts or cures fear better than action. So when I finished that time in Saudi Arabia at King Saud University, I had to end my contract early so that I could finish that last piece of the puzzle, which was going to Antarctica. And I, again, took a courageous act and closed my eyes and booked a flight and a cruise to Antarctica, not knowing the person at the other end of that computer as to whether it was legit or if it was a scam, and giving all those dollar bills away to someone who I had never met. But I booked that, and I ended up in South America, in Argentina. And I was walking around town looking and asking, is anybody going to Antarctica? Is anybody going to Antarctica? No. I'm like, is this thing even real? Is it legit? And so I came to the day before I went to Antarctica, and I met this remarkable man, and he was at a cafe. Actually, we were outside of the cafe, and I was sitting there, and I gave him a quick greeting in Spanish, the little Spanish that I knew. And he said, what are you doing here? And I said, well, I'm getting ready to go to Antarctica, and I'm just going to go out and buy a camera so I can capture the experience. And so he's like, well, in Spanish, he's like, well, why don't you borrow my camera? Okay, we're going to need a translator for this. So we go inside of the cafe. And I said, he is trying to tell me something. Do you speak English? Yeah, you speak English. Okay, can you tell me, what is this man saying? He's saying that he actually wants to let you borrow his camera for Antarctica, for a 10-day trip to Antarctica. I don't even know this man. Talk about being vulnerable. Talk about being empathetic. You know, someone willing to share with you. So I borrowed that, and I was able to use his camera, a man from Argentina's camera, to go to Antarctica. And so when I was there, in Antarctica, and I actually got to trek and hike throughout the continent, and I was standing on top of one of the hills. And I'm looking down at my outfit. Something says, look down at your outfit. And I'm looking from the soles of my feet to the crown of my head, and I'm covered with pieces of my journey, of the 7x30 journey, of the people that I met. And the pants were from a man from France who I met at the hostel the day before in Argentina, who said, do you need something for Antarctica? I just got back. Here, take my jacket, take my pants. So I'm wearing his clothes, and I'm wearing gloves from my roommate on the ship from Israel, and then I'm wearing a turban from one of my students from Saudi Arabia, and I'm wearing sunglasses from a South African who had given them to me. And every piece of clothing or item on my body was from someone who was generous. And courageous acts are about generosity. It's saying it's not about me. It's about reaching out and rescuing. Rescuing someone else, and then someone reaching out and rescuing you. It's a beautiful marriage of the two. One is not so much greater than the other, but both are needed. So today, what courage looks like for me, it's not perhaps as adventurous and exciting. Courage for me looks like helping my mom, who was diagnosed with lymphoma a couple of years ago, change her dressing and drain her lung. And I'm not a nurse. That's a pretty courageous feat. And to look her in the face and say, hey, I believe in you. I'm with you. We don't know what the other end of it looks like, but today, I'm in your corner. I'm with you. And that's what courage is. Courage is a connection that says, I'm with you, you're with me, we're together, and we're pressing on.